Krishna and welcome everyone for Bhagavatam. We haven't been broadcasting these readings because we haven't been reading. We deeply regret that, and we feel lost. We were busy festivals, as you probably some of you were following, or you were here with us for this Janmashtami appearance and our Kirtan Mela programs. But we'll continue now. We never plan to stop it. We don't want to stop reading. We continue where we left a few weeks ago. We're still at Canto 3, Chapter 25, the Glories of Devotional Service, verse 27. And before that, as always, we recite the verses of glorification of Srimad Bhagavatam, Mahima Stotra of Sanatana Goswami. Sarva Shastrabdi Piyusha, Sarva Vedaika Satpala, Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya, Sarva Lokaika Drikprada, Sarva Bhagavata Prana, Srimad Bhagavata Prabhu, Kalidvanto Dita Didya, Shri Krishna Parivartita, Paramana Patnaya Prema Vakshaksharayate, Sarvanda Sarva Sevihaya, Shri Krishna Namostu Me, Madhika Bandha Matsangin, Maro Matmahadana, Manishtaraka Madbhagya Madananda Mostute Asadu Sadutadayin Atinicho Chataraka Hanamuncha Kadachinmam Premna Hrit Kantayos Puram. Translation. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all other worlds. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Shri Krishna. I bow down to you who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Shri Krishna himself. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we are continuing the verse 27 of the chapter 25. Chapter is entitled The Glories of Devotional Service. Just press in. Just click. Yeah. Translation. Thus, by not engaging in the service of the modes of material nature, but by developing Krishna consciousness, knowledge in renunciation, and by practicing yoga, in which the mind is always fixed in devotional service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one achieves my associate in this very life, for I am the Supreme Personality, the Absolute Truth. So, Supreme Lord is speaking here. So let's see, I think the purpose will reveal for everything, like where we are and what's the setting. So, the purport by Srila Prabhupada. When one engages in devotional service, the 9 different kinds of bhakti yoga, as enunciated in authoritative scriptures, hearing, shravanam, chanting, kirtanam, remembering, offering worship, praying and offering personal service, either in one of them, or 2 or all of them, he naturally has no opportunity modes of material nature. Unless one has good engagements, it is not meant service. Those who are not devotees, therefore, are so-called or philanthropic work, such as opening a hospital or charitable institution. These are undoubtedly good works in the sense that, and the is that the performer may get some opportunities for sense gratification in this life or in the next. Devotional service, however, is beyond the boundary of sense gratification. It is completely spiritual activity. When one engages in the spiritual activities of devotional service, naturally he does not have any opportunity to engage in sense gratificatory activities. conscious activities are performed not blindly but with renunciation. This kind of yoga practice, in which the mind is fixed upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, results in liberation in this very life. The person who performs such acts gets in touch with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Lord Chaitanya, therefore, approved the process of hearing from realized devotees about the pastimes of the Lord. It does not matter to what category of this the audience belongs. If one meekly answers about the activities of the soul, he will be able to conquer the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is unconquerable by any other process. Hearing or associating with devotees is the most important function for self-realization. 28. Translation. On hearing of the Lord, Devahuti inquired, "What kind of devotional service is worth developing and practicing to help me easily and immediately attain the service of your lotus feet?" Purport. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita that no one is barred from rendering service to the Lord. Whether one is a woman or a laborer or a merchant, if he engages himself in a devotional service of the Lord, he is promoted to the highest perfectional state and goes back to Godhead. The devotional service most suitable for different types of devotees is determined and fixed by the mercy of the spiritual master. Okay, text 29. The mystic yoga system, as you have explained, aims at the Supreme Personality of Godhead and is meant for completely ending material existence. Please let me know the nature of that yoga system. How many ways are there by which one can understand in truth that sublime yoga? Purport. There are different kinds of mystic yoga systems aiming for different phases of the Absolute Truth. The Jnana Yoga system aims at the impersonal Brahman effulgence, and the Hatha Yoga system at the localized personal aspect, the Paramatma feature of the Absolute Truth, whereas Bhakti Yoga, or devotional service, which is executed in 9 different ways, headed by hearing and chanting, aims at complete realization of the Supreme Lord. There are different methods of self-realization, but here Devahuti especially refers to the Bhakti Yoga system, which has already been primarily explained by the Lord. The different parts of the Bhakti Yoga system are hearing, chanting, remembering, offering prayers, worshipping the Lord in the temple, accepting service to Him, carrying out His orders, making friendship with Him, and ultimately surrendering everything for the service of the Lord. The word Nirvanatman is very significant in this verse. Unless one accepts the process of devotional service, one cannot end the continuation of material existence. As far as jnanis are concerned, they are interested in jnana yoga, but even if one elevates oneself after a great performance of austerity to the Brahman effulgence, there is a chance of falling down again to the material world. Therefore, jnana yoga does not actually end material existence. Similarly, regarding the Hatha Yoga system, which aims at the localized aspect of the Lord Paramatma, it has been experienced that many yogis, such as Vishwamitra, fall down. But Bhakti yogis, once approaching the Supreme Personality of Godhead, never come back to this material world, as it is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. Yat gatva na nivartante. Bhagavad Gita 15:6. Upon going, one never comes back. Tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti. Bhagavad Gita 4:9. After giving up this body, he never comes back again to accept a material body. Nirvana does not finish the existence of the soul. The soul is ever existing. Therefore, nirvana means to end one's material existence. And to end material existence means to go back home, back to Godhead. Sometimes it is asked how the living entity falls down from the spiritual world to the material world. Here is the answer. Unless one is elevated to the Vaikuntha planets, directly in touch with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is prone to fall down, either from the impersonal Brahman realization or from an ecstatic trance of meditation. Another word in this verse, Bhagavat Bhanaha, is very significant. Bhanaha means arrow. The Bhakti Yoga system is just like an arrow aiming up to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Bhakti Yoga system never urges one towards the impersonal effulgence or to the point of Paramatma realization. This banha or arrow is so sharp and swift that it goes directly to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, penetrating the regions of impersonal Brahman and localized Paramatma. Banha. Text 30. My dear son, Kapila, after all, I am a woman. It is very difficult for me to understand the absolute truth because my intelligence is not very great. But if you will kindly explain it to me, even though I am not very intelligent, I can understand it and thereby feel transcendental happiness. Purport. Knowledge of the absolute truth is not very easily understood by ordinary, less intelligent men. But if the spiritual master is kind enough to the disciple, however unintelligent the disciple may be, then by the divine grace of the spiritual master, everything is revealed. Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakur therefore says, Yasya Prasadat, by the mercy of the spiritual master, the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavat Prasada, is revealed. Devahuti requested her great son to be merciful towards her, because she was a less intelligent woman and also his mother. By the grace of Kapila Dev, it was quite possible for her to understand the absolute truth, even though the subject matter is very difficult for ordinary persons, especially women. 31. Sri Maitreya said, after hearing the statement of his mother, Kapila could understand her purpose, and he became compassionate towards her because of being born of her body. He described the Sankhya system of philosophy, which is a combination of devotional service and mystic realization, as received by disciplic succession. 32. Bhagavan Uvacha. Lord Kapila said, the senses are symbolic representations of the demigods, and their natural inclination is to work under the direction of the Vedic injunctions. As the senses are representatives of the demigods, so the mind is the representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The mind's natural duty is to serve. When that service spirit is engaged in devotional service to the Personality of Godhead without any motive, that is far better even than salvation. That is far better even than salvation. Oh yeah. Salvation here is the word siddha, or perfection. Purport. The senses of the living entity are always engaged in some occupation, either in activities prescribed in the injunctions of the Vedas or in material activities. The natural inclination of the senses is to work for something, and the mind is the center of the senses. The mind is actually the leader of the senses, therefore it is called sattva. Similarly, the leader of all the demigods who are engaged in the activities of this material world, the sun god, moon god, Indra, and others, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is stated in the Vedic literature that the demigods are different limbs of the universal body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Our senses are also controlled by different demigods. Our senses are representations of various demigods, and the mind is the representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The senses led by the mind act under the influence of the demigods. When the service is ultimately aimed at the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the senses are in their natural position. The Lord is called Hrishikesha, for he is actually the proprietor and ultimate master of the senses. The senses and the mind are naturally inclined to work, but when they are materially contaminated, they work for some material benefit or for the service of the demigods, although actually they are meant to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The senses are called Hrishika, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead is called Hrishikesha. Indirectly, all the senses are naturally inclined to serve the Supreme Lord. That is called Bhakti. Kapila Dev said that when the senses, without desire for material profit or other selfish motives, are engaged in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one is situated in devotional service. That spirit of service is far better than siddhi, salvation. Bhakti, the inclination to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is in a transcendental position far better than mukti, or liberation. Thus bhakti is the stage after liberation. Unless one is liberated, one cannot engage the senses in the service of the Lord. When the senses are engaged, either in material activities of sense gratification or in the activities of the Vedic injunctions, there is some motive. But when the same senses are engaged in the service of the Lord and there is no motive, that is called animita. N is the natural inclination of the mind. So animita is the natural inclination of the mind. And there's no motive. Natural inclination of the mind is to have no motive. And be in service of the Lord, of course. No personal motive. The conclusion is that when the mind, without being deviated either by Vedic injunctions or by material activities, is fully engaged in Krishna consciousness or devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it is far better than the most aspired for liberation from material entanglement. Text 33. Bhakti, devotional service, dissolves the subtle body of the living entity without separate effort, just as fire in the stomach digests all that we eat. Purport. Bhakti is in a far higher position than mukti because a person's endeavor to get liberation from the material engagement is automatically served in devotional service. The example is given here that the fire in the stomach can digest whatever we eat. If the digestive power is sufficient, we can eat with the fire in the stomach. Similarly, in liberation, that very service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the process of his liberation, because to engage oneself in the service of the Lord is to liberate oneself from material entanglement. Thakur explained this position where he said, devotion to the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, then mukti or liberation serves me, my main servant. Mukti, the main servant, is always ready to do whatever I ask. For a devotee, liberation is no problem at all. Liberation takes place without separate endeavor. Bhakti, therefore, is far better than mukti or the impersonalist position. The impersonal goes severe penances and austerities to attain mukti, but the bhakta, simply by engaging himself in the bhakti process, especially in chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, immediately develops control over the tongue, the Godhead. This is our perfection of the yoga, and one's liberation begins immediately as soon as he engages himself in the service of the Lord. It is confirmed by Kapiladev that bhakti, or devotional service, is gariyasi, more glorious than siddhi, liberation. So it's confirmed by Lord himself. Okay. Text 34. A pure devotee who is attached to the activities of devotional service and who always engages in the service of my lotus feet never desires to become one with me. Such a devotee who is unflinchingly engaged always glorifies my pastimes and activities. Purport. There are 5 kinds of liberation stated in the scriptures. One is to become one with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or to forsake one's individuality and merge into the Supreme Spirit. This is called ekatmatam. A devotee never accepts this kind of liberation. The other 4 liberations are to be promoted to the same planet as God, Vaikuntha, to associate personally with the Supreme Lord, to achieve the pure devotee, as will be explained by Kapila Muni, does not aspire for any of the 5 liberations. He especially despises as hellish the idea of becoming one with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sri Prabodhananda Saraswati, a great devotee of Lord Kaivalyam Narakayate. The happiness of becoming one with the Supreme Lord, which is aspired for by the Mayavadis, is considered hellish. That oneness is not for pure devotees. There are many Socrates who think that in the conditioned state we may worship the personality of Godhead, but that ultimately there is no personality. They say that since the Absolute Truth is impersonal, one can imagine a personal form of the impersonal Absolute Truth for the time being, but as soon as one becomes liberated, the worship stops. That is the theory put forward in the Mayavada philosophy. Actually, the impersonalists do not merge into the existence of the Supreme Person, but into his personal bodily luster, Brahmajyoti. Although that Brahmajyoti is not different from his personal body, that sort of oneness, merging into the bodily luster of the personality of Godhead, is not accepted by a pure devotee, because the devotee is engaged in greater pleasure than the so-called pleasure of merging into his existence. The greatest pleasure is to serve the Lord. Devotees are always thinking about how to serve Him, always desiring ways and means to serve the Supreme Lord, even in the midst of the greatest obstacles of material existence. The Mayavadis accept the description of the pastimes of the Lord as stories, but actually they are not stories, they are historical facts. Pure devotees accept the narrations of the pastimes of the Lord not as stories, but as absolute truth. The words Mama Purushani are significant. Devotees are very much attached to glorifying the activities of the Lord, whereas the Mayavadis cannot even think of these activities. According to them, the Absolute Truth is impersonal. Without personal existence, how can there be activity? How can there be activity? Question. The impersonalists take the activities mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavad Gita as cheap. They have no idea of the personality of Godhead. They unnecessarily poke their noses into the scripture and interpret it in a deceptive way in order to mislead the innocent public. The activities of Mayavada philosophy are very dangerous to the public, and therefore Lord Chaitanya warned us never to hear from any Mayavadi about any scripture. They will spoil the entire process, and the person hearing them will never be able to come to the path of devotional service to attain the highest perfection, or will be able to do so only after a very long time. It is clearly stated by Kapila Muni that bhakti activities or activities in devotional service are transcendental to mukti. This is called Panchama Purushartha. Generally, people engage in the activities of religion, economic development, and sense gratification, and ultimately they work with an idea that they are going to become one with the Supreme Lord, Mukti. But bhakti is transcendental to all these activities. The Srimad Bhagavatam therefore begins by stating that all kinds of pretentious religiosity is completely eradicated from the Bhagavatam. Ritualistic activities for economic development and sense gratification, and after frustration in sense gratification, the desire to become one with the Supreme Lord, are all completely rejected in the Bhagavatam. The Bhagavatam is specially meant for the pure devotees who always engaged in Krishna's in the activities of and always glorify these transcendental activities. Pure devotees worship the transcendental activities of the Lord in the Vrindavan, Dwarka and Mathura, as they are narrated in the Srimad Bhagavatam and other Puranas. The Mayavadi philosophers completely reject them as stories, but actually they are great and worshipable subject matters, and thus are relishable only for devotees. That is the difference between a Mayavadi and a pure devotee. Text 35. Oh, my mother, my devotees always see the smiling face of my form with eyes like the rising morning sun. They like to see my various transcendental forms, which are all benevolent, and they also talk favorably with me. Purport. Mayavadis and deists accept the forms of the deities in the temple of the Lord as idols, but devotees do not worship idols. They directly worship the personality of Godhead in His Archa incarnation. Archa refers to the form which we can worship in our present condition. Actually, in our present state, it is not possible to see God in His spiritual form, because our material eyes and senses cannot conceive of a spiritual form. We cannot even see the spiritual form of the individual soul. When a man dies, we cannot see how the spiritual form leaves the body. That is the defect of our material senses. In order to be seen by our material senses, the Supreme Personality of Godhead accepts a favorable form, which is called Archa Vigraha. This Archa Vigraha, sometimes called the Archa Incarnation, is not different from him. Just as the Supreme Personality of Godhead accepts various incarnations, forms made out of matter, clay, wood. There are strict instructions for carving forms. These forms are not material. If God is pervading, then He is also in the material. Please think otherwise. Everything is God. When they form of the Lord, everything is God. Then why is the deity not God? Actually, they have no concern, however, is different. Their vision is mere the love of God. As soon as they see the Lord in His forms, the devotees become saturated with love, for they do not find any difference between God and His form in the temple, as do the atheists. The smiling face of the deity in the temple is beheld by the devotees as transcendental and spiritual, and the decoration of the body of the Lord is very much appreciated by the devotees. It is the duty of the spiritual master to teach the deity in the temple how to cleanse the temple and how. There are different procedures and rules which are followed in the temples. Sorry, I just lost it. Oh, Vishnu. Sorry, I just the electronic device. And devotees go there and see the deity, the Vigraha, and spiritually enjoy the form, because all of the deities are benevolent. The devotees express their minds before the deity, and in many cases, the deity also gives answers. But one must be a very elevated devotee in order to be able to speak with the Supreme Lord. Sometimes the Lord informs the devotee through dreams. These exchanges of feelings between the deity and the devotee are not understandable by atheists, but actually the devotee Kapila Muni is explaining how the devotees see the decorated body and face of the deity and how they speak with him in devotional service. Text 36. Upon seeing the charming forms of the Lord, smiling and attractive, and hearing His very pleasing words, the pure devotee almost loses all other consciousness. His senses are freed from all other engagement, and he becomes absorbed in devotional service. Thus, in spite of his unwillingness, he attains liberation without separate endeavor. Purport. There are three divisions of devotees: first class, the second class, and third class. Even the third class devotees are liberated souls. It is explained in this verse that although they do not have knowledge, simply by seeing the beautiful decoration of the deity in the temple, the devotee is absorbed in thought of him and loses all other consciousness. Simply by fixing oneself in Krishna consciousness, engaging the senses in the service of the Lord, one is imperceptibly liberated. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Simply by discharging uncontaminated devotional service as prescribed in the scriptures, one becomes equal to Brahman. In Bhagavad Gita it is said, Brahma Bhuyaya Kalpate. This means that the living entity in his original state is Brahman because he is part and parcel of the Supreme Brahman. But simply because of his forgetfulness of his real nature as an internal servitor of the Lord, he is overwhelmed and captured by Maya. His forgetfulness of his real constitutional position is Maya. Otherwise, he is eternally Brahman. When one is trained to become conscious of his position, he understands that he is the servitor of the Lord. Brahman refers to a state of self-realization. Even a third-class devotee, who is not advanced in knowledge of the Absolute Truth, but simply offers obeisances with great devotion, thinks of the Lord, sees the Lord in the temple, and brings forth flowers and fruits to offer to the deity. becomes imperceptibly liberated. Shraddhayanvitaha. Devotees offer worshipful respects and paraphernalia to the deity. The deities of Radha Krishna, Lakshmana, Narayan, and Rama and Sita are very attractive to devotees, so much so that when they see the statue decorated in the temple of the Lord, they become fully absorbed in the thought of the Lord. That is the state of liberation. In other words, it is confirmed herewith that even a third-class devotee is in a transcendental position above those who are trying for liberation by speculation or by other methods. Even great impersonalists like Shukadeva Goswami and the four Kumaras were attracted by the beauty of the deities in the temple, by the decorations and by the aroma of tulasi offered to the Lord, and they became devotees. Even though they were in the liberated state, instead of remaining impersonalists, they were attracted to the beauty of the Lord and became devotees. Here the word refers to the activities or pastimes of the Lord. It is worship. Not only should one visit the temple to see the deity nicely decorated, but at the same time he should hear the recitation of Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, or some similar literature, which is regularly recited in the temple. It is the system in Vrindavan that in every temple there is recitation of the Shastras. Even third-class devotees who have no literary knowledge or no time to read Srimad Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita get the opportunity to hear about the pastimes of the Lord. In this way, their minds may remain always absorbed in the thought of the Lord, His form, His activities, and His transcendental nature. This state of Krishna consciousness is a liberated stage. Lord Chaitanya, there are 5 important processes in the discharge of devotional service. First, to chant to the Lord, Krishna Krishna Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Second, to insert them as far as possible. Third, to hear Srimad Bhagavatam. Fourth, to see the decorated temple and the deity. And if possible, fifth, to in a place like Vrindavan or Mathura. 5 items alone can help a devotee achieve the highest perfectional stage. This is Srimad Bhagavatam. That third-class devotees can also imperceptibly achieve liberation is accepted in all Vedic literatures. Thus, because he is completely absorbed in thought of me, the devotee does not desire even the high addiction obtainable in the upper planetary systems, actions obtained from mystic yoga. He desires to be elevated to God. Even in this life, all the offered benedictions. Purport. The vibhuti, or opulences, offered by Maya are of many varieties. We have experienced different varieties of material enjoyment even on this planet. One is able to promote himself to higher planets like Chandraloka, the sun, or still higher, Maharloka, Janaloka, or even ultimately by Brahma. For example, the duration of life on higher planets is far, far greater than on this planet. It is said that the duration of life is such that are equal to one day. We cannot even imagine the duration of life on the highest planet. In Bhagavad Gita that Brahmas are applicable to our mathematicians. These are all descriptions of the external energy of the Lord or Maya. Besides this, there are other opulences which the yogis can give by their mystic power. They are also material. A devotee does not aspire for any of these material pleasures, although they are available to him simply by wishing. By the grace of the Lord, a devotee can achieve wonderful simply by willing, but a real devotee does not like that. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has taught that one should not desire material opulence or material reputation, nor should one try to enjoy the service of the Lord, even if one does not give liberation, but has to continue the process of birth and death. Actually, however, to one who engages in Krishna consciousness, liberation is already guaranteed. All benefit benefits of the higher planets and the Vaikuntha planets also. It is especially mentioned here, Bhagavatim Bhadram. In the Vaikuntha planets, everything is eternally peaceful, yet a pure devotee does not even aspire to be promoted there. But still he gets that advantage. He enjoys all the facilities of the material and spiritual worlds, even during the present lifespan. Translation. The Lord continued, My dear mother, devotees who receive such transcendental opulences are never bereft of them. Neither weapons nor the change of time can destroy such opulences, because the devotees accept me as their friend, their relative, their son, preceptor, benefactor, and supreme deity. They cannot be deprived of their possessions at any time. Purport. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita that one may elevate himself to the higher planetary systems, even up to Brahmaloka, by dint of pious activities. But when the effects of such pious activities are finished, one again comes back to this earth to begin a new life of activities. Thus, even though one is promoted to their system for enjoyment and a long duration of life, still that is not a permanent settlement. But as far as the devotees are concerned, their assets, the achievement of devotional service, and the consequent opulence of Vaikuntha, even on this planet, are never destroyed. In this verse, Kapila Deva addresses his mother Rupa, indicating that the senses of the fixed because devoted in the Vaikuntha atmosphere, which is called Shanta Rupa, because it is in the mode of pure goodness, stirred by the modes of passion and ignorance. Once one is fixed in the devotional service of the Lord, his position of pleasure and simply increase unlimited. For the devotees engaged in Krishna consciousness, the Vaikuntha atmosphere, there is no influence of time. In the material world, the influence of time destroys everything. But in the Vaikuntha atmosphere, there is no influence of time or of the demigods, because there are no demigods in the Vaikuntha planets. Here, our activities are controlled by different demigods, and the action is controlled by the demigods. But in the Vaikuntha atmosphere, there is no influence of the demigods or of time. Therefore, there is no question of destruction. When the time element is present, there is the certainty of destruction. But when there is no time element, past, present, or future, then everything is eternal. Therefore, this verse uses the words na nakshanti, indicating that the transcendental opulences are never destroyed. For freedom from destruction is also described. The devotees accept the Supreme Lord as their personality and receive with Him in different relationships. They accept the Supreme Personality as the dearmost friend, the dearmost relative, the dearmost son, the dearmost preceptor, the dearmost well-wisher, or the dearmost deity. The Lord is eternal. Therefore, any relationship in which we accept Him is also eternal. It is clearly confirmed herein that the relationships cannot be destroyed, and therefore the opulences of those relationships are never destroyed. Every living entity has the propensity to love someone. We can see that if someone has no object of love, he generally directs his love to a pet animal, like a cat or a dog. Thus, the eternal propensity for love in all living entities is always searching for a place to reside. From this verse, we can learn that we can love the Supreme Personality of Godhead as our dearmost object, as a friend, as a son, as a preceptor, or as a well-wisher. And there will be no cheating and no end to such love. We shall eternally enjoy the relationship with the Supreme Lord in different aspects. A special feature of this verse is the acceptance of the Supreme Lord as the Supreme Preceptor. Bhagavad Gita was spoken directly by the Supreme Lord, and Arjuna accepted Krishna as Guru, Master. Similarly, we should accept only Krishna as the Supreme Spiritual Master. Krishna, of course, means Krishna and his confidential devotees. Krishna is not alone. When you speak of Krishna, Krishna means Krishna in his name, in his form, in his qualities, in his abode, and in his associates. Krishna is never alone, for the devotees of Krishna are not impersonalists. For example, a king is always associated with his secretary, his commander, his servant, and so much paraphernalia. As soon as we accept Krishna and his associates as our preceptors, no ill effects can destroy our knowledge. In the material world, the knowledge which we acquire may change because of the influence of time, but nevertheless, the conclusions received from Bhagavad Gita, directly from the speeches of the Supreme Lord Krishna, can never change. There is no use interpreting Bhagavad Gita. It is eternal. Krishna, the Supreme Lord, should be accepted as one's best friend. He will never cheat. He will always give his friendly advice and friendly protection to the devotee. If Krishna is accepted as a son, he will never die. Here we have a very loving son or child, but the father and mother, or those who are affectionate towards him, always hope, may my son not die. But Krishna actually never will die. Therefore, those who accept Krishna or the Supreme Lord as their son will never be bereft of their son. In many instances, devotees have accepted a deity as a son. In Bengal, there are many such instances, and even after the death of the deity performs the Shraddha ceremony for the father. The relationship is never destroyed. People are accustomed to worship different forms of demigods, but in Bhagavad Gita such a mentality is condemned. Therefore, one should be intelligent enough to worship only the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his different forms, such as Lakshmi Narayan, Sitaram, and Radha Krishna. Thus, by worshiping the demigods, one may elevate himself to the higher planets. During the dissolution of the material world, the deity and the abode of the deity will be destroyed. But whoever worships the Supreme Personality of Godhead is promoted to the Vaikuntha planets, where there is no influence of time, destruction, or annihilation. The conclusion is that the time influence cannot act upon devotees who have accepted the Supreme Personality of Godhead as everything. We have verse 39 and 40 together. Translation. Thus the devotee who worships me, the all-pervading Lord of the universe, in unflinching devotional service, gives up all aspirations to be promoted to heavenly planets, or to become world with wealth, children, cattle, home, or anything in relationship with the body. I take him to the other side of birth and death. Purport. Unflinching devotional service, as described in these two verses, means engaging oneself in full Krishna consciousness or devotional service, accepting the Supreme Lord as all in all. So that's Bhakti Yoga. Since the Supreme Lord is all-inclusive, if anyone worships him with unflinching faith, he has automatically achieved all other opulences and performed all other duties. The Lord promises herein that he takes his delight of birth and death. Lord Chaitanya therefore recommended that one who aspires to go beyond birth and death should have no material possessions. This means that one should not try to be happy in this world or to be promoted to the heavenly world, nor should he try for material wealth, children, houses, or cattle. How liberation is imperceptibly achieved by a pure devotee, and what the symptoms are, have been explained. For the conditioned soul, there are two statuses of living. One status is in this present life, and the other is our preparation for the next life. If I am in the mode of goodness, then I may be preparing for promotion to the higher planets. If I am in the mode of passion, then I shall remain here in a society where activity is very prominent. And if I am in the mode of ignorance, I may be degraded to animal life or a lower grade of human life. But for a devotee, there is no concern for this life or the next life, because in any life he does not desire elevation in material prosperity or a high grade or low grade life. He prays to the Lord. My dear Lord, it does not matter where I am born, but let me be born even as an ant, in the house of a devotee. A pure devotee does not pray to the Lord for liberation from this material bondage. Actually, the pure devotee never thinks that he is fit for liberation. Considering his past life and his mischievous activities, he thinks that he is fit to be sent to the lowest region of hell. If in this life I am trying to become a devotee, this does not mean that in my many past lives, I was 100% pious. That is not possible. A devotee, therefore, is always conscious of his real position. Only by his full surrender to the Lord, by the Lord's grace, are his sufferings made shorter. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, surrender unto me, and I will give you protection for all kinds of sinful reaction. That is his mercy. But this does not mean that one who has surrendered to the lotus feet of the Lord has committed no misdeeds in his past life. A devotee always prays, "For my misdeeds may I be born again and again, but my own prayer is that I may not forget your service." The devotee has that much mental strength, and he prays to the Lord, "May I be born again and again, but let me be born in the home of your pure devotee, so that I may again get a chance to develop myself." A pure devotee is not anxious to elevate himself in his next birth. He has already given up that sort of hope. In any life in which one is born, as a householder or even as an animal, one must have some children, some resources or some possessions. But a devotee is not to possess anything. He is satisfied with whatever is obtainable by God, attached to improving his social status or improving the status of education of his children. He is dutiful, but he does not spend too much time on the upliftment of temporary household life. He fully engages in the service of the Lord, and for other affairs he simply spares as much time as absolutely necessary. Yatharam upayunjataha. Such a pure devotee does not care for what is going to happen in the next life or in this life. He does not care even for family, children, or society. He fully engages in the service of the Lord in Krishna consciousness. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita that without the knowledge of the devotee, the Lord arranges for his devotee to be immediately transferred to his abode just after leaving his body. After quitting his body, he does not go into the womb of another mother. The ordinary common living entity after death is transferred to the womb of another mother according to his karma or activities to take another type of body. But as far as the devotee is concerned, he is at once transferred to the spiritual world in the association of the Lord. That is the Lord's special mercy. How is it possible? Is explained in the following verses. Because he is all-powerful, the Lord can do anything and everything. He can excuse all sinful reactions. He can immediately transfer a person to Vaikuntha. That is the incredible power of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is favorably disposed to the pure devotees. And today then the yoga starts. Text 41. The terrible fear of birth and death can never be forsaken by anyone who resorts to any shelter other than myself, for I am the Almighty Lord, the Personality of Godhead, the original source of all, and also the Supreme Soul of all souls. Purport. It is indicated herein that the cycle of birth and death cannot be stopped unless one is a pure devotee of the Supreme Lord. It is said, Harim bina nasritim taranti. One cannot surpass the cycle of birth and death unless one is favored by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The same concept is confirmed herewith. One may take to the system of understanding the absolute truth by one's own perfect sensory speculation, or one may try to realize the self by the mystic yoga process. But whatever one may bring to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, no process can give him liberation. One may ask if this means that those who are penance and austerity by strictly following are endeavoring. The answer is given in Srimad Bhagavatam 10:32. Yenye ravindaksha vimukta maniha. Lord Brahma and other demigods prayed to the Lord when Krishna was in the womb of Devas. My dear lotus-eyed Lord, there are persons who are puffed up with the thought that they have become liberated or one with God or have become gods. But in spite of thinking in such a puffed up way, their intelligence is not laudable. They are less intelligent. It is stated that their intelligence, whether high or low, is not even purified. In purified intelligence, a living entity cannot think otherwise than to surrender. Bhagavad affirms that purified intelligence arises in the persons of a very wise man. Bahunam janmanam ante jnanavam mam prapadyate. Bhagavad Gita 7:19. After many, many births, one who is actually advanced in intelligence surrenders unto the Supreme Lord. Without the surrendering, one cannot achieve liberation. The Bhagavatam says, those who are simply puffed up, thinking themselves liberated by some non-devotional process, are not polished for them. In spite of executing all kinds of austerities and penances, or even Brahman realization, they think that they are in the effulgence of Brahman, but actually because they have no transcendental activities, fall down to material activities. One should not be knowing that bhakti is Brahman. It is said that unless one becomes Brahman, one cannot serve Brahman. The Supreme Brahman is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the living entity is also, without realization that he is Brahman, Spirit Soul, an eternal servitor of the Lord. If one simply thinks that he is Brahman, and at the same time engage himself in the devotional service of the Lord, he can exist in a Brahman status. Otherwise, he falls down. The Bhagavatam says that because non-devotees neglect the transcendental loving service of the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead, their intelligence is not sufficient, and therefore these persons fall down. The living entity must have some activity. If he does not engage in the activity of transcendental service, he must fall down to material activity. As soon as one falls down to material activity, there is no rescue from the cycle of birth and death. It is stated here by Lord Kapila, without my Nanyatra mat Bhagavata. Bhagavataha, the Lord is stated here to be Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, indicating that he is full of all opulences and is therefore perfectly competent to deliver one from the cycle of birth and death. He is also called Pradhana because he is the Supreme. He is equal to everyone, but to one who surrenders to him, he is especially favorable. It is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita that the Lord is equal to everyone. No one is his enemy and no one is his friend. But one who surrenders blind, grace of the Lord, simply by surrendering unto him, one can get out of this cycle of birth and death. Otherwise, one may go on in many, many lives and may many times attempt other processes for liberation. So this ends today's reading. Thank you for your presence, for being here. So we'll do it again tomorrow. We'll continue at verse 42. Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you very much.